years ago.
Call the Thursday, January 23rd City Commission meeting to order. First item on the agenda would be the review of the January 9th minutes. Any changes?
None.
None.
Stand as written. Citizen comments for non-agenda items. Anybody have anything? All right, seeing none, go to the consent agenda. Have a few items for approval. We have Matthew Wheeler for the Planning Commission, Gary Good for the Hayes Housing Authority Board, and then I have some recommendation, Dustin Shaffley, Jim Shriver, and Mike Bitson for the Hayes Area Planning Commission, Patty Park and Catherine Wolf for the Hayes Public Library Board.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda item.
Seconded.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. I was gonna yell. Okay, no unfinished business. Next item on the agenda would be Hayes Recreation Commission pool reimbursement request.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Boyle, Director of Parks. Last week we met and had our joint meeting with the Hayes Recreation Commission. We talked about the area pools, and then we also talked about the Bickel-Schmidt Sports Complex. One of the items from that joint meeting that does require action is the pool reimbursement. So I'm here this evening to talk about the pool reimbursement. We looked at this slide last week. This is just kind of shows the attendance. You can see there the total at the end is pretty close to where we usually are, up from the last couple of years. I think 2016 we were, right about where we are now, maybe just a little bit lower. But so anyway, we had a good year overall. Did have some weather days, but it wasn't too much of a burden. We talked about the daily rate comparison, and Mayor Musil, I did add in here under each facility name. I added in when they were constructed. That was a question that you had last year or last meeting. So Hutchinson was in the same time we went in 2000, and that is actually the facility I was thinking of that I visited. I did also go to McPherson, but it was a couple of years later. We also mentioned the averages here. Hayes and Great Bend are both pretty much the lowest in the state, and then they kind of sort of go up from there. So we also talked about season passes, and I'd mentioned that our current season pass is at $40, and then the early bird special, which most people are buying the early bird special, is at $35. So we're a little lower on the season passes compared to some, but we do sell a lot of season passes, and it's a good way to get our money early. And as Commissioner Jacobs mentioned last week, it's a good way to guarantee those cloudy, cold days, guarantee some revenue. So talked about the last 4 years here of pool operation. This is the Hayes Rec side of things. So this is what Hayes Rec is reporting for their revenue and then their expenses. At the bottom of each year there is the total loss for the year. And we'll be focusing here on the 2019 numbers right now. They did lose $52,289.31. By contract, they have a stop loss of $26,000. So they lose up to 26, and then the city has to fund the remainder. Otherwise, it's split 50-50 if it's below that amount. They did exceed that or hit that stop loss this year of $26,000. So as you can see, the city's responsibility would be $26,289.31. This is another slide we looked at last week. I threw it back in just to kind of remind everybody that the far right column is the total cost to the city for each year. That does include the pool reimbursement request that's in the second to the last column. So, and then of course the history of the pool reimbursements there. And this is the action that's requested this evening, which basically is following along with the contract, and we are requesting to reimburse the Hayes Recreation Commission their $26,298.31.
I move we approve the pool reimbursement request for the Hayes Recreation Commission for the 2019 pool loss amount of $26,298.31 with funding from the contractual services line item of the 2019 general fund pool budget.
I second.
Motion and second. Any comments?
All good comments, all good stuff.
I really liked just what the rec brought to us last week on just where they're functioning with the ball fields and how that's actually improving. And I think there's, we have a lot of good quality of life things going on in this community. I hate seeing that loss, but I think we've said this many years. It's just one of those things we have to deal with, unfortunately. So.
Thank you.
I appreciated the Rec Commission's conversation last week about the ball fields and the turf and all that, and they actually sent the last bid they got. I mean, they weren't formally requesting, but informational. Probably not going to let this die. We'll probably try to figure something out. At least I am.
I'd be for that. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, rezoning request for 700 West 48 from Commercial General District C2 to Agriculture District AL.
Good evening, Jesse Rohr, Director of Public Works. A couple rezoning requests to present to you tonight. The first one, as you can see on the screen here, this is generally located west of Vine, north of I-70. Highlighted in the blue on the screen is the general location of the property, and you might know it as the former Mid-Kansas Auto Auction business. You also may recall that this property was annexed into the city this past October. Currently, the entire property is zoned C2. The red box on the screen indicates where the existing area of the property will continue to be C2 and is not part of this discussion. The green outlined area is the proposed area to be rezoned to AL or agricultural. And so that area in green is the focus of the rest of the discussion here. The general area to the east of the subject property is all C2. You can see everything in the red, basically from Vine Street clear to the west to this property is C2. The remainder of the property on the adjacent sides abutting the subject property is ag currently. On anytime we're talking about rezoning, we always want to pull up the comprehensive plan and give you an idea of what the comprehensive plan states. The area is identified as urban reserve or ag in the current adopted comprehensive plan. And this shows you a list of the typical uses that are allowed outright within the Unified Development Code for ag zoned areas. You can see that there's 9 different uses, and other than the single family detached uses, they're generally outdoor type of uses found in the ag areas. It's also important to keep in mind that although you may or may not know what particular use the developer has in mind for the property, to keep all these uses in mind once it's zoned, any of them are fair game. So it's always important not to zone with one particular use in mind. Currently, the property does have private water and septic and has, ever since there's been a business located on the property. Water will be relocated or located adjacent to the property here before July 1st of 2020. There's a current city project that's taking water down 48th Street that will allow connection of this property. Sewer will also be connected, located near the property for connection. The developer will be doing that at their expense. We actually had a meeting earlier this week with the developer regarding sanitary sewer and some options of getting it to the property. So that's in the works. They're working with an engineer currently on getting sewer there. Also want to mention the floodplain. On my left here, you can see the current floodplain map. There is some area, probably almost a third of the property that is in the floodplain. However, with the proposed new floodplain, the flood remapping project that's going on currently, they are removing most of the area from the 100-year floodplain. So it'll significantly benefit the developer with the new floodplain remapping adoptions.
Jesse?
Yes.
I'll interrupt you for a second. Would you like to explain to the public how the floodplain is getting smaller?
Sure. So the current floodplain maps are they're FEMA maps, and they were adopted in 1986. We've not had new maps since 1986. So current technologies and the ability, the data they have available, the modeling they have available, allows for much more accurate floodplain mapping these days than it did 30 plus years ago. And so we're seeing areas not just in Hayes, but across the county. The remapping is a countywide project. And we're seeing a lot of areas reducing in size. There are a few that are coming into the floodplain, but we're also seeing several reductions in floodplain. So it's, there's using what they call 2D modeling, which is like say kind of a higher tech and accurate modeling method they use. And so it's allowing further studies and more intense studies in areas like this that, again, will have the benefit for property owners.
Thank you.
Jesse, what is the timeline for the adoption of the new maps?
The new maps probably won't be fully adopted until early 2021. However, state does allow us to use what they call the most, I can't remember the term exactly, but the highest and best use of data available now. So they've got data available, they've got the mapping drafts to us, and allow us to use that mapping on current projects even prior to full adoption of the official map. So.
Thank you.
So your options, there are 3 specific options per state statute for a rezoning, and you can either approve as recommended by the Planning Commission. I do want to mention that this particular zoning case had 1 dissenting vote on the Planning Commission. There was no reason given for that, but it was a 4-to-1 vote to approve the zoning as submitted. You can choose to override the Planning Commission. That would take a 2/3 majority vote of the City Commission. Or if you felt the need, you could return it back to the Planning Commission for further discussion with a specific basis for returning it. This will be the action requested if you choose to do so.
I move we approve the ordinance number 3978, rezoning a portion of the property described as 700 West 48th Street from C2 Commercial General District to AL Agriculture.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments?
I'll make the comment that in the work session, I was the one that asked about the dissenting vote, reading through the agenda items, or the agenda of the Planning Commission. I'll just note that there was no reason given from that dissenting vote as to what their particular issue is. So from that standpoint, with 5 others voting to approve it, and we talked about in the work session, I don't really see any issues.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda, Hess Land LLC and City of Hayes rezoning 5809 230th Avenue, Agriculture District AL to Commercial General District C2.
Okay, one more rezoning application to discuss. The first one, we were going from commercial to ag. Now this one, we're going from ag to commercial. Property is located north of I-70 at exit 157, kind of on the northwest corner of that particular intersection. Have a little closer view of the property. It is on the west side of 230th Avenue, just to the west of the Celebration Community Church area. There's actually 2 parcels of property being zoned under this application. The light blue area towards the south end is actually owned by the City of Hayes, and previously the KDOT mixing strip has been the KDOT mixing strip, probably in most, almost as long as I-70's been located there. The other area, the dark blue area, is owned by Hess Land LLC, and both properties are currently annexed into the city. That annexation occurred this past December. Both properties are currently zoned ag. Across the road, where the church is located, that blue area you see there is public institutional district, and you also see some other areas of C2 general commercial, some light industrial to the south on the south side of I-70, and then the remainder of it, for the most part, being ag. Comprehensive plan identifies this area as business park, which includes a mix of commercial and light industrial uses. The property is currently being used as pasture or grassland. So you might remember in the last agenda item, I think there were 9 uses in the ag district. Here you can see there's significantly more uses allowed outright in a C2 zoning district. And the same thing holds here, as I mentioned before. Once zone C2, any of these uses are fair game on that property. Rural Water does currently provide service to this particular area. However, they have approved a release of the area and allow the city to provide water service to the area. Although the property doesn't currently have utilities immediately available to it, the developer, as part of the development that's coming up, assuming approval, will be extending water and sewer from south of I-70 to serve this particular area. So the same options as with the other zoning. And again, the Planning Commission did unanimously this time approve this request. And this will be the action requested moving forward.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 3979, rezoning the property described as 5809 230th Avenue from AL Agriculture to C2 Commercial General District.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Comment? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda, Economic Development Policy Amendment, Rural Housing Improvement District, RHID Policy Section. Commissioners, I will say, I think there possibly could be some people out in the audience that may want to speak. I'd like, before we comment, let them talk if they choose. If not, let you know.
Good evening. I'm Doug Williams, Executive Director of Grow Hayes. Thank you for having me tonight. Wanted to share with you, which won't be news to you, but I have an update on our affordable housing efforts at Grow Hayes. And it primarily surrounds the purchase of a 21-acre tract at 22nd and Wheatland by Heart of America Development Corporation. And the reason that I'm here tonight from a Grow Hayes standpoint and economic development standpoint is basically this statement that the availability of affordable housing is critical to the recruitment and retention of a workforce in our community. Without an adequate workforce, we cannot attract new businesses or retain the ones we have. Clearly, I know all of you have seen the unemployment rates that get published on a monthly basis. Over the last few months, they've been at 1.9, 2.0, very low. This presents a lot of major challenges for some of our local businesses, particularly those who are wanting to grow. And without being able to attract a workforce, one of the challenges they have is housing. Numerous times I've had employers tell me that they have recruited an individual to come to work for them. They've gone shopping for homes in Hayes and have not found acceptable housing at an acceptable price. And while they were ready to accept an employment offer, opted not to because they couldn't find the right type of housing. So we felt that this needed to be addressed. We approached the Heart of America Development Corporation, who has traditionally been an industrial developer. I think you're all familiar with Heart of America. They developed the area out at the Commerce Parkway Industrial Park. Were established back in the late 80s. Have done a lot of things in the industrial area. We approached them that they didn't have a whole lot going on, and we suggested that maybe a good spot for them might be housing development in an effort to promote some industrial development. To their credit, they agreed. We also found a ready, willing, and able landowner who was asking a whole lot more for the land than what they ended up being willing to take, who from a philanthropic standpoint agreed to take much less than they were asking in the hopes that it would help our local economy, also help their adjacent properties that they own. So when we talk about affordable housing, if I ask 20 different people, I assure you I'm going to get 20 different answers as to what that really means. And if you follow social media at all, there's certainly plenty of opinions out there as to what is and isn't affordable.
I really think we should take the word affordable out. I think it's more need housing than it is affordable.
You know, in Salina, they labeled it workforce housing. Works for me. That's fine if we want to posture it that way. But to give you some idea where we came up with the range which we feel is affordable or needed, maybe that's a better word, we took the median family income in Ellis County, which is $50,592. Then we applied mortgage standards to that number, which the mortgage underwriters will tell you that typically 30% of a family's gross income they can afford for housing expense. Now, many variables that enter into that, clearly, credit scores, other debts, that type of thing. But traditionally, 30% can go towards housing. That's $1,265 a month for that family who has a $50,592 median income. If you break that out, taxes and insurance on a home are going to be about $300 a month. That leaves roughly $965 for a principal and interest payment. Today's rates, that will borrow $202,000 at 4% for 30 years. So we feel that our workforce housing would be very well in line in that $175,000 to $225,000 price range. The other factor is simply this: you're not going to build housing in Hayes or probably any place else for any less than that, for new construction. Depending on what you pay for the lot and some things like that, you're just not going to do it. I would be happy to argue with anybody that has some plan in mind that we can go out and build new homes for $125,000, because it just isn't going to happen. So that's our position regarding what affordability is and what workforce is looking for. Interestingly, I had a realtor run a report for me yesterday of homes in the 175 to 225 range in Hayes. There were 10. The average year built was 1966. So new housing in that price range is going to be appealing to the right audience, and I believe will resolve a lot of our housing issues in terms of recruitment of a workforce. Clearly, this isn't going to be the first home for many people. This might be one that they move up to. It might be one that they move down to. But the housing market, in spite of what some people believe, is not driven by the realtors deciding what things are going to sell for. It's driven by, like all other markets, it's by primarily supply and demand. And by adding supply, we can meet some of the demand. With only 10 homes in that range that I was talking about, when somebody comes to town, they don't have much to look at. But if we can add a sufficient supply of new homes in that range, it'll make a difference, and it'll help soften prices.
Doug, I have a question. What is, I don't know if normal's the right word, but different price ranges in Hayes, what is the normal, I guess, amount of houses up for sale? Or is that even a...
No, I think that any given time, right, in Hayes, there might be 80 to 90 for sale total.
Total.
Yeah. I've seen it as high as 150 to 200. I've got a lot of gray hair, so it goes back a long time that maybe some of those numbers existed. So it ebbs and flows, but I'll say this. Typically, if you look at a market, the days on market, if it's over 180, they consider it a buyer's market. It takes over 180 days on average to sell and close a house. If it's under 180 days, they consider it a seller's market. Right now, I think our average days on market are roughly about 140. So they're a fair amount under that 180 number. So we have inadequate supply for too much demand, and that is the primary driver in house prices in our community.
Doug, can you speak to new construction in particular? What does a community, what kind of percentage or amount shows that a community is growing or should be on the market for new construction?
Well, I'm not sure I have a firm number for you, but I can tell you that historically, and Jesse and Curtis can help me with this, Hayes maybe has built 30, 35 homes a year, kind of year in, year out to meet the demand. This last year, maybe we're 17, maybe half that amount. And certainly none in the price range that we're talking about. Virtually all of
Most
them
of what has been built this year and last year are custom built to whatever the consumer wants to pay for a house.
Right. Custom built, or at least the spec might be built to looking for somebody who's willing to pay more money.
Thank you.
275 and up, I would say. So this is a much needed price range to meet the needs of a workforce and to add inventory to the market in the right spot, in my opinion. And I think the research would back that up.
A really nice piece of this that I've appreciated as we're in my thinking as we go through it is whatever, I'm going to call it workforce housing. I'm going to leave the affordable out.
Okay.
But the workforce housing, we're not going to get 40 people come to town and buy these houses. we'd like to. Maybe you've got something going I don't know about, Doug, but we will have people moving up, which will then free up another whole level of housing that, if they're moving up, it is going to be not substantially less, but less than this probably. And it brings in another market. So I think there's a lot of good things about this, but that's one thing that I was hoping it would do, is move some people up and free up some inventory below that.
Talking to a builder in Salina who did a project similar to this, he built 28 homes. Half of them sold to what he thought would be workforce type housing people, young families and growing families. Half of them sold to downsizers. And singles, divorcees. So we'll have both. I have no doubt.
But it opens up other inventory.
Exactly. On really both spectrums, people moving
Exactly.
down, people moving up. As we said, our target audience, workforce, downsizers, singles. The RHID, which we're here to talk about tonight, that's essential to affordability. Typical specials on a house in a area where they have to pay specials, about $150 a month. If you look at that 4% 30-year number I did, $31,000 is what $150 a month will finance. So they can afford essentially $31,000 more in a home by not having to pay specials than what they can afford otherwise. So thus adding to the affordability factor of it. I mentioned Heart of America, perfect partner, perfect development partner, because they aren't profit motivated necessarily. They are community motivated. They want to do what's good for the community. So they're not looking to get in this and make a lot of money. We've talked to NCK. As you know, NCK builds one home a year on campus, and they've traditionally sold it and moved it off. I ask them, why not just build it in this development? It makes sense. You don't have to move it off. You don't have to deal with all that. Get a little more experience from the total project versus just building it, not a foundation and some of the things they don't do now. They don't build a garage now. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. Fort Hays Construction Management Department is interested in working with builders and with NCK in it. And so it's a great community project, and clearly with an RHAD, the city, the county, and the school district all participate in making it happen. The infrastructure, clearly the current policy, and we haven't asked for a change in this, is that it's a pay-as-you-go policy by the developer. Fully develop this out, probably in excess of $2 million that the developer is going to have to come up with. They don't have $2 million to tie up in the development of this, but they do have some resources and some borrowing capability. Have talked to a number of local lenders who have said they would step up and finance that portion of the infrastructure that Heart of America doesn't want to finance, and collectively as their contribution to this project. And then clearly I've talked to building suppliers, contractors, subcontractors, all of them asking them to recognize that this is a project that helps this community, and not asking you to do this for nothing, but I would like you to put your best foot forward and try and help this in any way you can. Again, trying to get the savings to the buyer, to the homeowner, and not different people picking along the way. This is the tract. As you can see, that's right at 22nd and Wheatland. Nope, that doesn't work. Push and hold. Which one?
All of
That one? Okay. That's the tract. It lays out basically like that. 75 lots, all of them pretty small, so you're not going to be able to build big homes on there, just 62 feet wide. So that's self-limiting to a certain degree on the size of home you're going to put on there. And while smaller doesn't always equate to less expensive, it does equate somewhat less expensive. And I guess where I'm going with that, I've seen some talk about the cost per square foot. Well, the smaller the house, the higher your square foot cost is going to go, because you have fewer square feet to spread like the cost of the lot and some things like that over. So, but these will be 1,150 to 1,400 square feet roughly, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, basements, non-basements, probably be a mix of both. Different builders will be involved in it. We've kind of talked to a number of builders at this point, asked them to submit floor plans, asked them to submit estimates of what they think they can build them for, elevations of what they'll look like. Interestingly, they're almost all the same, very, very close, which it's not surprising necessarily, but we plan to start in the area that's yellow and move to the north from there, primarily because the most expensive ones to develop are the area in green, where you have NCK Tech on the west side, and they don't participate in the cost of the street. And so those lots along there are going to have to bear the total cost of the street, as opposed to in the other areas, you've got a lot on each side of the street to split that cost. Interestingly, you look at, people talk about the cost of housing and affordable land and that kind of thing, and this is a decent price for the land. It's a good price, but it comes out to about $2,600 per lot. When you compare that to the cost of infrastructure for a lot, which is probably $30,000 to $32,000 a lot, you could have the land for nothing, and it wouldn't make all that much difference on what your overall cost is going to be. So the cost gets gobbled up in a lot of other areas. This is the area we talked about that restricts this development from happening as we have it perceived because of the 10 apartment rule that currently exists in the RHID policy. This is what we ask you to look at the work session, and have asked you to look at some sort of a modification of that would work to allow this development to be put in as we have proposed it.
And I would jump in that the commission is presented with an amendment based off the discussion last week, drawn up by the city attorney. It is an addition to the policy, not necessarily a modification in the existing language, that it states a qualifying nonprofit entity may be granted an exemption from the 10 renter unit minimum. Qualifying nonprofit entity shall have been in existence for a sufficient period of time to demonstrate its viability, and its proposal shall achieve the overall purpose of this policy. Granting of the nonprofit exemption from the aforesaid 10-unit requirement shall be at the discretion of the city governing body. So with that, we would.
I move approval of the addition to the policy as just read by the city manager.
No second.
Motion and a second. Anybody in the audience like to speak about it? Adam, please.
I spoke with some of you commissioners and some of
Adam,
you.
please say your name. For the record.
Oh, this is Adam Prey. Hi, guys. I spoke with some of you guys, and some of you have not. But the question I have with the amendment, it's adding a nonprofit in for this project. The question I have for the commission or anybody, what are we accomplishing by putting that in regards to how many RHIDs have we used in the past? Does anybody know?
None.
So then the next question, how's that working for us? Would be, instead of maybe just amending it for this project or for nonprofit, I would challenge it, would it make more sense to change it and eliminate the 10 units moving forward to maybe encourage some more developers using the RHID versus continuing down the same path we've done for years and not having any results?
I guess question on the the functionality of that. So if it was to be removed, with the wording or without, the entire process still goes through us, and we have the approval of how it functions. So
Every
with-
application for incentive goes through the commission.
So with or without the wording, it doesn't necessarily change anything.
I would actually argue it may encourage more people to
Well,
apply,
I mean,
but you still have the power
For how
to
we go through the
vote no.
process itself.
Changes the initial criteria is all.
Right.
Right now, if Adam were to come in and say, I've got an idea, I want to do this, but it doesn't include the minimum 10 renter income units, then we would say, sorry, it doesn't qualify. You either have to, do like Doug and go to the commission, or use another vehicle.
So if we were to remove the 10 renter minimum, I guess could potentially encourage more developers to come before us, we'd probably just see more RHID requests.
You could, yes. And
Hopefully.
the city commission would have to entertain each one of those individually.
And the other thought to keep in mind is if a developer came and they try to use an RHID, the purpose is affordable housing. Well, if the developer they're going to use that to pad their pocket. They're not going to take away any specials or anything. They're just going to make more money. You still, like Mason said, can vote no. You don't have to approve it. So that would be something just to consider.
To me, criteria B, 1 and 2 kind of speak to that. Assure taxpayers the city's not financing already viable project. Assure the taxpayers that the city is not financing in a reasonably high profit margin for developers. So to me, the criteria speaks to that from a profit standpoint. Can I get a little bit more clarification of what adding the 10 renter occupied low income, because I believe that was added somewhere in 2012. Is there some?
It was part of the policy's creation.
Okay.
So the RHID as a vehicle didn't exist until I believe 2013. Maybe with the 2012 legislature adopted the statutes, which led to the ability of cities to use it. So in 2013, the city commission determined that they would like to have a policy that addressed it within their economic development policy. And during the policy development process, the city commission landed upon the 10 renter income or income qualified units. And so it was included in the policy. So it's never been modified since it was created. That was part of the creation.
Well, when we created it, Ron, I think you could help me on this. Overland
Property.
was wanting to build, and they wanted to fulfill a need that the city showed it had. So that's why we put it in. And they didn't get their tax credits, so it was never used. And that was the reasoning. And from what I remember is we put this in because it was supposed to be for kind of like what we're talking about tonight. It was built to fulfill a need what our community needs. And Adam, I spoke to you the other day, and I appreciate you coming over and talking to me, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit on this whole discussion. I just don't think it should be a free-for-all. But I don't disagree with you either. So I don't know.
I appreciated the conversation as well, Adam. I appreciate anybody that comes forward with thoughts on this. I think a rural housing improvement district policy is important for our community when we have a need. And that's the way I see it. And that's why it was developed here. Right now we have a need that involves a nonprofit, which I think even extends further the value of a policy like this. What I get very conscientious about as we talk through this is what it's going to do to the tax base and the community property tax. I think we put at risk not just the city's ability to the increase in the property tax, but the county and the school district as well. So to me, this is the cleanest way to take an existing policy that works so far and accommodate a nonprofit that is meeting a need in our community and not having to completely take stuff out. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody.
I'll elaborate a little bit more on what Sean had said, is that when we developed this policy, something that low-income housing is always a shortage, something that is income-based. And we wanted to make sure that that was being addressed at the same time. And what we were looking at mostly at that time were for-profit companies coming in and building apartments, but yet we were leaving out low income. So that's why we included the low income or income-based apartments into that, so that we could address the full gamut, people that can't afford the housing, the apartments, and the people that cannot. And like Sandy said, this also, if we open this up and we have rural housing, improvement districts all over, our tax base is it's going to go away. And I don't think the school district or the county is just going to approve these willy-nilly, and especially for a for-profit company, because of the direct effect that it's going to have on their budgets.
In my response to that, Sean, you said free for all. You guys have some concern about the tax basis. My response is we haven't had a single RHID yet, and you're concerned about a free for all. I'm hoping we get an applicant.
Well,
And if we do get an applicant, you still have the power to say, geez, I don't see the need. I'm going to vote against it. So you still have that power. I guess the idea of an RHID, we always hear, affordable housing, workforce housing, whatever you want to call it. I can name communities off the top of my head who have homes that have been built less than 200,000. Every single one of them, to my knowledge, has used a program similar to an RHID or an RHID. We haven't. I feel like we may be a little bit behind in that area. And placing these restrictions, I don't think helps. I think it deters builders from coming in. And again, you're not losing any power. Maybe we're just encouraging some applicants. I'd understand, Ron, if we had 10 applicants and you guys are turning them all away, you want to put more restrictions on. There's nobody at the door. There's no applicants. So maybe we get rid of the restrictions, encourage it. 75 units is going to be great. I don't know how many years that's going to take to build out, but that's a step in the right direction, but that does not solve our problems. That doesn't solve our need. Like Doug mentioned, we are in a seller's market right now, and our economy, it's okay. It's not great. If you go back to 2013, 2014, we had a total of 38 homes on the market for sale. Every single offer had multiple offers. It didn't matter if there's wallpaper, it didn't matter what the home looked like. We had multiple offers. We're headed back that way. And the other thing that I'd like to comment towards Doug's 5-month supply, almost half of that is high-end, 300,000 or higher. If you want a high-end home in Hayes, we're inundated with them. We got plenty. Try to find a new home that's built somewhere between 1990 or later for $225 or less. We don't have any. And he's also talking about people coming to town. We do have people that actually did accept the job. I've got a guy right now, he lives in Dorrance, Kansas. He drives from Dorrance to Hayes every single day. He sold his home in Wichita. Walkout basement, 3-car garage for $225,000. You try to find something comparable in Hayes, we're in $350 plus, probably closer to $400. And he just refuses to live in our community because of that. So with all due respect, I understand what you guys are saying. I do understand your concerns, but the response is you don't have to approve it. Just vote no. If we meet the need, then maybe we put the restriction back on.
It's impossible to foresee this kind of situation. A nonprofit coming before you to build houses. I think when the policy was put in place as it is, it's almost always thinking about for-profit companies. And I think you can't foresee something as unique as this situation kind of is with the Heartland Group and Grow Hayes being a nonprofit. So I do have some hesitations that we're essentially lowering the hurdle at this time and amending the policy to fit something that we're more enthusiastic at this time without thinking about, well, what else may we not be foreseeing in housing projects? So with that being said, I'm going to make a motion, Mr. Mayor,
Well, wait a
to
second.
table.
We have
Yeah,
to
there's a
vote.
motion on the table.
Gotta vote
Right,
on the first
I want to make the motion to table
I think
the action.
I think we have to vote on the first one.
Hang on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Parliamentarian.
Vote.
Yeah, a motion to table is a privileged motion. He gets to make the motion. If there's a second, then you have to take a vote. It's non-debatable. You do it, you table it or you don't. It's either tabled to a specific time, or in this event, he's just he's moved to table it, which means it can't be taken up again or off the table at this meeting if it passes.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
My question is, if we table this, what does it do for what's going on with this project?
I'll make the motion for the table and I'll explain what
Okay.
I'm asking. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to table the item, the amendment, for further discussion at the next work session and then brought up for action at the next regular scheduled commission meeting.
Motion to table. Second?
It dies.
Require a second?
Under their rules, it does. And so it dies for lack of a second. So
Lack-
you're now presented with your original motion, which has been seconded, and you can terminate your discussion at any time you desire.
Can I talk about what just happened?
You're the mayor.
Well, I know, I can talk about
Subject to
mine.
the approval of your commission.
Yeah, okay,
you
can
can-
I ask more questions about this, please? So if it was tabled, though, please explain to me, if we tabled it and it's done, does it delay what's going on with the project?
I can't answer that. I'm not, that's a question for Doug.
Doug?
Certainly, we want to get this on the fast track.
Right.
I would not like to see it tabled simply because I would like to, in the time that it would be tabled, I would like to think that we would be well on our way to having an RHID application in front of you to do this. I've stated that I would love to see some RHID approval sometime this spring, which I'm not exactly sure how the old time frame works. And then, some perhaps streets being put in sometime this summer. I've been told by people a lot smarter than me that I'm nuts to think that that's attainable. But I just lean on Curtis and Jesse for that. I'm eager to go. I want to make the right decision, but we're eager to go and as quickly as we can. So,
Well, okay, thank you.
to answer
I
that
guess
question.
Procedurally, we could essentially table it and use the exit ramp clause to continue with the RHID process for this project, correct?
Correct.
Because we
The
could,
commission can always choose to ignore their policy.
we could
It's-
ignore
it's
it,
Clause number
move
2.
forward with
of the
this and then
economic
table it
development
another
policy.
time. We can do that.
Right.
Okay.
I would throw something else, not to confuse the matter, but the commission could also, in the interest of this project, the commission could also amend the policy and then take up the policy again at a future work session.
I would like to
It's
do that.
eminently amendable.
Well, I would like to continue this discussion because I've had people that are not happy with this because we are giving up that tax base. That they're saying, well, I'd like to go ahead and build 10 houses. I want to come in and apply for this. Because you are giving that tax base, and we wouldn't have to pay it if we decided to put up 10 homes. All of a sudden, we end up with everybody wanting their homes with no taxes on them. And so I feel like we open up a real can of worms. We're going to be probably every other month, people coming in and saying, well, I want to do this on mine, but you're giving it away now. We want it too.
I guess in its
That's a good thing.
in its current state, the 22nd Wheatland specifically,
Mhm.
what are we collecting from property tax on it in its current state?
Oh, like $58.
Okay.
$58 an acre.
And then once the project is completed, the RHID goes through after the 20, 30 years, the 58, 20 or 25, was that? How long's the
25
RHID?
years.
25
It's
years.
Recently amended.
So after 25 years of $58, or you lose $58 a year,
But
25 years roughly.
Figure average house is $200,000 and average property
then after
tax
that,
on
we-
that's 200, it's $150,000 to $180,000 a year. You're really not giving away any taxes that you're currently getting. You're giving away the opportunity to collect taxes if somebody else were to go and develop something on it.
But they haven't.
Just like with, right.
How long has that property been platted currently?
20 years, 25?
So no one's jumping at the gun to develop it?
Well,
I would be.
you also have to look at the price that they were wanting for it. I mean, at one time, it was $50,000 an acre. Well, they didn't pay $50,000 an acre. Well, that's the problem that we have with trying to achieve workforce housing, or whatever you want to say. That all starts with affordable land. And these individuals decided to take a lot less to help promote this.
Right.
If I went out there and wanted to buy it, I was going to pay $50,000 an acre. For affordable housing, I can't, workforce housing, I can't make it pay out. And then pay, my specials on top of that.
I would just say this, and I understand where Adam's coming from. I don't necessarily disagree with him, but I have found the city and the city commission always eager to listen to development ideas and willing to make changes if it makes sense. So I think if another development came in, another developer, and had a project that made sense and needed this to be changed, I would not hesitate to come before you again and say, we've got another opportunity and maybe we need to make a change.
This has been on the books since 2012.
2013.
We haven't had anybody come in and ask for anything at that point.
We had two entities that intended on using it. Both were Overland Property Group, actually 3 times.
But they
were
were
looking at
tax
purchasing a
credits.
property on 22nd. They were looking at purchasing the former 4 Days Trailer Park and then the Washington School, and they failed to get tax credits for all 3 of those.
So,
I haven't changed how my motion stands. I don't know where we are procedurally. I appreciate city manager's comments that this can be taken care of tonight, and if we want to redress the policy at a later date, we can do that, and I think that's what we should do.
I think so. Too.
But again, my motion stands.
I comment. I actually agree with all 4 of you, and I think we've all heard from people in the last week that kind of. I think as Adam, Doug has said. I mean, I had people contact me. They love that what we're doing because it's going to open up housing that they can maybe move up in Hayes where they couldn't before. And some people, kind of what you were saying, Commissioner Melick, that they absolutely disagree with it. But for me, majority of the people love that we're trying something different. And I kind of see where you guys are at. I mean, and Mr. Bray, you said that nobody's beating the door down now. I guess I'd like to see somebody beat the door down personally. I mean, I think it'd be great to see Hayes moving a lot faster, but I think we should move on as written, personally, as the motion is, and then I think in the very near future, I think, especially with the new commission, I think we should revisit the RHID. Any other question as the motion seconded, right? We did have a second, right? Yes. So if no more conversation, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4.
I vote no.
Passes 4-1. I'm sorry. Nay. Motion
I would
passes.
like to, for the record, on my no vote, it's not because of my lack of enthusiasm for the project. It's because I don't want to come back and keep amending each time. And it's not no at a later date. It's just no right now. So, thank you, Doug, and Heartland Group and Grow Hayes. I am excited about the project.
And I appreciate Michael's comments. I think that they're fair comments. But I think that if we are demonstrating right now, or Mr. Williams is demonstrating what happens when you do come up with something you decide you want to do, and you reach out and you find all the pieces. You understand the need in the community. You work with builders. You talk to people about it not being all about money, about being good. Who would have had the courage to go to the landowners previously with the price they had on it? Whoever, Doug is representing Grow Hayes, and he's representing them very well. And I appreciate it, Doug, and I'm glad this project's in front of us.
Yes, it is. And the commissioners, the conversation we had, I mean, this is exactly what people voted for. They want us, having these, opinions. Thing is, we can't just have opinions. We have to make decisions. So
Can I give them my speech? That if we all agreed, 4 of us could stay home?
It'd be lonely up here, though.
Yeah, it would be. Oh.
Next item on the agenda, and we hear it's Toby's last progress report.
Oh,
because
no.
Colin gets to take over.
Won't have Toby to kick around anymore after this week. On that last item, if it's all right with the commission, I will put that on a future work session to
Yes.
discuss
Thank you.
Please.
possible revision to RHD policy.
Please.
Okay. Toby Doherty, City Manager, here with the progress report. An older vacant hangar was purchased at the Hayes Regional Airport, and the hangar was undersized and in a spot that, quite frankly, could be put to a more economical use. So the hangar was moved to the Public Works facility. Service Division crews did this. They disassembled the hangar. They moved it. They poured a new pad at Public Works, moved it. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had an outcome picture. And it is now being used as a storage shed for crack sealing materials and other materials that we previously kept outside. So it's a pretty good utilization of an old piece of equipment. The alley return between 11th and 12th on Milner was reconstructed by Service Division staff. As you can see, it was in dire need of reconstruction. And then they also replaced approximately 300 foot of curb along the on 10th Street, just east of Elm. Stormwater maintenance actually went up and along Canal and Lincoln Draw and trimmed trees 5 to 7 foot above ground level. We had a lot of cedar and pine trees that had grown down to ground level, and they were trash collectors for the most part. And so stormwater went in and trimmed them out, and it's a much more open and inviting look now. Every year, the Solid Waste Division stockpiles bicycles that are thrown out by residents during the alley cleanup. The bikes are taken down to the Ellsworth Correctional Facility, where they're refurbished, repaired, and then made available through a program called Pedals for Progress. And I believe these go to, are given away either free or at extremely low prices to people in need. And last week, staff took 2 trailer loads down of approximately 120 bicycles.
Do they all come back to here, or do we just get random bikes do they bring back?
I think they're all distributed by the Pedals for Progress program, so I don't know if we have a certain allotment that comes back to us.
That's great.
Park staff installed interpretive signage at Sunrise Park's Pollinator Garden. Parks also had a very large or a very tall headstone damaged during a recent storm that they leveled and put back together. And then Parks did a top dressing of rock in West Frontier's parking area. Deputy Chief Dawson and Sergeant Brandon Hopman and Officer Ethan Henderson were recognized at the Hayes Middle School, were part of the Hayes Middle School recognition for the attendance awards. I never won that award, by the way. The SSRT team completed some entry training on January 13th, and KSN News thought it was newsworthy. And in the photo, you see Team Commander Lieutenant Tim Greenwood. The Water Resources Department, along with KSU Watershed, hosted a basketball game at Fort Hays on January 4th. There were a lot of attendees that stopped at the various booths that city and KSU staff had, talking about the various programs and the various components of the stormwater and watershed pollution and anti-pollution efforts. An interesting note that the men's and women's teams actually wore the T-shirts that were kind of given away at the ball game as their warm-up. So we were happy to see that. The water treatment facility has 3 lime pits. We use a lime softening process, and it creates a waste of lime. And so we have to periodically clean those pits out. And right now, Mid-Kansas Cooperative has a crew removing the lime from the Public Works building. This is something we used to do in-house, and we hauled it up to the northwest to the city's landfill, and we would spend several weeks of trucks going back and forth of Service Division of Water Resources labor. We have now made this lime available for those who want to come pick it up, and it's put on agricultural fields to help put required nutrients in the soil. It's worked out pretty good for us, and it's worked out pretty good for the people that we give the lime to at no
So they
labor.
are coming.
Yes,
We built it and they came.
we're building. They came, and it's no labor for us. And this is just a shot of the open trench. The water line was bored under I-70. This just shows the process. They dig a big hole, they put the boring machine down, they punch it through, and then they fill it back in. It's a pretty unique process. The Miss Rodeo Kansas was in town. Miss Rodeo Kansas is actually former CVB intern Tiffany McCaffrey. So we are pretty proud of her. And then the Convention and Visitors Bureau provided a bus tour for international students, the new students, show them around town. And Convention and Visitors Bureau also helped out with the Sternberg new exhibit, their opening night. And then the final plans for the North Vine Corridor project have been submitted to KDOT for a March 25th, 2020 bid letting. And staff is going to be presenting at the first March work session. We're going to be presenting the anticipated phasing schedule. We've got our engineer and project manager, John Bound, working on some boiling down 300 and some pages worth of traffic control and phasing into some easy graphics to show you on the different phases over the 2-year project. And then we will also talk about the process to City Commission to award the, concur with the awardance of bid for KDOT, probably coming in May then, and then the notice to proceed. And that's all I have. Stand questions if you have any.
All right, commission inquiries and comments. Mr. Millick?
I have nothing this evening.
Citizens' comments to me, kind of completely different. I think the lights are up on Main Street as of today.
Yeah.
Correct. The comments to me, though, while they were down, were actually more, traffic was easier and more convenient while the lights were down. And I know those lights give us a kind of a historic and ambiance to the downtown. But I would kind of tend to agree that driving Main the last week or so has been fairly quick. So.
I will tell you, the retailers will argue with you a little bit. They like them slowing down and looking in their windows.
100%, I agree. And it is nice when you see them stop, how they do look around.
Yeah, they
together,
do.
And
I'll also comment, as a new commissioner this week, I've toured a couple of the different departments. Thank you to Toby and Andrea for scheduling those. I got a few more next week, and I've been filling up with knowledge. It's been fun.
I guess to echo Michael, I've been doing some tours for some of the departments, and it is incredible to see how much of a well-oiled machine the city of Hayes is. It's incredible. Public Works, Jesse, you guys do a fantastic job, especially with. I would have thought you had hundreds of people working with you, but with the amount of staff you have, it's almost flawless. So I appreciate that. And then I toured PD and Parks. Jeff Boyle and Don Scheibler both run fantastic departments too. It's nice to see all the wonderful things that are happening, and they're very proud of their jobs, which is great. So thank you, Toby, and everybody, all the department heads that I've met and will meet. It's a fantastic place.
It's always nice to hear that, and I've always passed the credit along to the leader of the whole group, and that's our city manager that does a wonderful job. And I think the biggest thing that he does that I've seen in my 3 years here, he allows his people to work and make decisions and get things done, and that's to be congratulated.
Hire good people and turn them loose.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I just want to commend also your staff. I had quite a few customers this last week come in. What day we had the ice.
Mm-hmm.
But people that drove into work to Hayes, they said they couldn't believe how much better the roads were in Hayes compared to some of the smaller towns they came from. So, and I know I hear people where you read on Facebook on how much stuff we put on the roads and stuff, but it sure is nice when you can drive down the roads without, sliding and slipping and stuff. So kudos to the, everybody that's working the streets. And I had firsthand got to watch those guys put the lights up, and being in the black, they almost like blend in. It's amazing how much
That powder
difference
coating
there
is
and,
nice.
But I appreciate the work you guys put into that. And, we're adjourned.
Hey, Doug.